Today on the Travel Royally podcast, we have a good friend from Northern Ireland, Mr. George Diamandis. He has done a lot of work with golf tourism in Northern Ireland and now doing some work with the Open there in Ireland. Jeff is excited to be able to talk with him today, and I hope you enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Travel Royally podcast. We're thrilled today to have a friend of ours from Northern Ireland, George Diamandis. George was born in Zimbabwe, grew up between Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa. After finishing university in South Africa, he moved to London for 3 years before settling in Belfast in 2011. He's been working in the tourism industry in Northern Ireland for the last 6 years. Firstly, with Visit Belfast, in business tourism. And then he moved to Tourism Northern Ireland in 2019 in product development. He's since moved on to be the golf marketing manager. He did that in October of 2021, a little over a year ago. And now he looks after the golf product in Northern Ireland, with the Open in 2025 being a very key part of his job for the next 3 years. George, welcome to the Travel Royally podcast.
Brilliant, Jeff. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
I hope I got your resume relatively correct.
You did, yeah. The pronunciation of the name was good as well.
Yeah, well, I told you I wrote that down phonetically, so hard to screw that up, I guess. Well, it's interesting to me when I travel throughout Ireland and Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK as well. I'm astounded by where people are from. There seems to be kind of a melting pot going on particularly in Northern Ireland. It seems that way. Now, you're a long way from Zimbabwe. How the world did you get to Belfast?
So I've got a family connection to Northern Ireland. My grandparents were from here back in the day. So I don't know if you've watched the movie Belfast. And that pretty much is their story. So during the Troubles, I think in the 1960s, they left, early 1960s, and they moved out to go work. They took a ship out to South Africa and then drove up to Zambia. And they worked my granddad worked in the copper mines in Zambia. So my mom was a young child. She was born in Belfast as well. So I've always had this family connection, albeit, my life has been very different. My mom met my dad in Zimbabwe, and he's from a Greek heritage. So I think he's one generation before my grandparents moving out. So in those times, there was a big expat community from, quite a lot of Europe living in Africa. So I grew up between the 3 different countries. And then me and my wife, before, the plan was never to stay here. The plan was always either to move back home or to move to Australia. And my mom had moved back to Northern Ireland while we were living in London. So we saw an opportunity to blow our savings backpacking and then come back and get some free rent as a near 30-year-old. And it just sort of 1 year extended to a second year, 2 years extended to 4 years. And we're quite surprised at what Northern Ireland was like and what Belfast is like as a city. And then also how quickly things were changing here. I think we timed it really, really well. Northern Ireland really from 2011 was sort of, when we arrived, was the start of a huge transformation in the city. So it just made sense for us to stay.
Now, is your wife from Northern Ireland? Is she from?
No, she's South African as well. So she's from Durban.
Excellent.
On the east coast of South Africa. So she kicking and screaming, I suppose, a beach girl from Durban, where they're not used to any form of winter at all. And me saying, look, I kind of like it here. We could probably stay a little bit longer. But I think at the end of the day, the people is what won her over. So yeah, she's super happy here as well now.
So what do the two of you love most about Northern Ireland? Sounds like people are one of them. One of the things.
Without a doubt, the people for us and the friends we've been able to make and the community that we've sort of integrated into. Living in London, being the nature of the city with so many people come and go the whole time, you don't really get to make long friendships with the same people there. I think over the 3 years we lived there, it was a rotating door of people coming in and out, just the nature of a big city, I suppose. And then in Northern Ireland, reminded us very much of home. The small community, people very family focused, very family orientated, and just super welcoming. You mentioned earlier about being a melting pot of communities. It certainly wasn't like that when we first moved here.
Oh, really?
Not at all. If I ever caught a taxi and I'd say where I needed to go, I was heading home, the taxi driver looked back at me in the car and, where are you from?
Yeah.
So being a bit of a novelty was made it a bit easier because we were looked after so well. Everyone wanted to hear our story, and particularly when we said, we really love it and it's a fantastic place, and you can sort of see people, they take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
We found it very easy to integrate, and people have been superb to us.
Excellent.
So yeah, the people and then the opportunity for us, obviously South Africa and Zimbabwe for us both is not the same employment opportunities and that type of thing. So it's a bit more stability here, and the ease of access to travel, particularly around Europe, is pretty cool.
Yeah, excellent. Now you're the golf marketing manager for Northern Ireland. Are you a keen golfer yourself?
I'm a much keener spectator than I am a player. I didn't really have too much of an opportunity playing as a kid. So it's not the same as obviously what golf is like here with youth programs and all the rest of it. Botswana was slightly different when I was, my junior school days out there. So I've loved the game and always been a follower of it. But procrastinated starting, it's not something you pick up and learn in a couple of weeks. So I've always postponed. I think I set myself a deadline for my 30th, and then I was like, okay, now I'll start playing properly on my 40th. So having got the job just before my 40th, I've been trying to play as much as I can. It's such a fantastic opportunity with the amount of golf that we have here, and then the opportunities around with the golf and the people you get to meet. So a big fan, but I'm looking forward to getting a lot better.
So with not being a keen golfer yourself when you took the job or around that time, how did you come to a career in golf tourism?
Fortunately, it was more of a marketing job than a golf job. So the ability to play golf was never really a prerequisite. The understanding of the game was obviously very important, and I suppose more so it was, I was fortunate and I had the experience from the business tourism side, understanding the city very well from the industry, understanding the network of people involved, be it through the experiences of the accommodation providers. And then from a marketing perspective, I suppose maybe I had some good ideas from an outsider of what works really well and what a lot of people here take for granted, which from a visitor we find so special. So I think maybe those type of things added and worked out in my favor.
Yeah.
So,
well, there are, I forget the number of Americans that have Irish heritage, but it's something that's incredible. Like 35 million of us, right? Have some part of our heritage from Ireland. And when you think about that, that's astounding when you think there are only 5 or 6 million people on the entire island, right? And there are, 6 or 7 times that living in the U.S. alone.
Yeah. But I think the population of Ireland hasn't fully recovered since the potato famine. Interesting fact.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your current role. What are you responsible for?
So in my role at the moment so I look after specifically Northern Ireland on the golf marketing side of things. But that's not to say we don't work really well in terms of the way we promote the island. Anything done outside of the island, from a marketing perspective, we market as the island. But my remit will be specifically on Northern Ireland. So all aspects of marketing promotion on Northern Ireland as a golfing destination. So we'll be managing the marketing campaigns, trade events, fam trips, bringing in operators in to show them the product, and then also the industry development side. So working with the golf clubs. There's obviously a wide variety of golf clubs, from our championships links courses, which the America is very sought after for the American market, right to our sort of Parkland, the hidden gem products that really aligns well with the GB and European market. So all aspects of golf, and from a sales and marketing perspective. So a really fun remit to be in. And what's great about golf is that it's classed as a high value tourism product. So golfers, particularly the North American market, it's a bucket list experience to come to Ireland and play golf. So the spend tends to be quite higher, and it's very niche as well. So we kind of sit alone. There's no other specific manager from a marketing perspective in the team. So it means you've got a bit of autonomy over what you're looking to do, and a big remit in terms of it's a big revenue earner for us from a tourism perspective.
Yeah, I put myself on mute for a moment because you could probably hear the train behind me going by my office. But I heard what I think might be a hero of yours this weekend, South African Gary Player. Mm-hmm. They played the Nedbank Challenge down in South Africa, I believe, this past weekend, and he was talking about the importance of golf tourism, that it's a high value kind of tourism. And it made me, it's the first time I thought of it from that perspective, that whether you're going to a golf tournament, it's a 4-day event. So you've got, and actually it's longer than that, right? People start arriving 7 days. It's a full week event. So you've got hotels, restaurants, pubs, the golf courses around it. But for people like us that send people to Northern Ireland, yeah, I can see that as well. That, you know, if we send a group of 8 golfers to Northern Ireland, the cost of that, when you think about it, would probably be, the land cost would probably be $32,000. In other words, our golfers would leave behind in Northern Ireland $32,000. So that's about 36,000 pounds. That's a lot of money for a group of 8 people.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. And it tends to be, you know, broadly speaking, the demographic of golfers, particularly the traveling golfer, are, you know, well established in their careers. Their kids will tend to have left the household. So they do have that little bit of discretionary income that they can spend on a trip like this. And then also, like I say, it's a bucket list trip. So for the US market specifically, you know, they're coming to experience the best of what Northern Ireland has to offer, or Ireland or Scotland, where they're coming to this part of the world, and they're wanting to enjoy it. So that then does come with a bigger spend. And what's great with golf is that you're coming to play the courses. So, you know, whether there be political uncertainty, the weather, whatever it might be, that's not really taken into consideration. They're coming to play that particular course, and it takes, what, 4 hours of your day? You got another half a day to fill. So you'll get a lot of spend in the clubhouse. You get a lot of spend, particularly around the pro shops, and then for the rest of the day, wherever they might be in town. So the food and drink offering does very, very well.
Yeah, that's a great point, George. I know when a big thing that we try to do to separate ourselves from other people that do what we do, or similar to what we do, is build experiences.
Yeah.
So we want them to experience the country. We want to find the best shops, the best tours. Stopping at Bushmills is an example, or in Dublin. I think the #1 tourist destination in the country is the Guinness St. James Gate property, right? I mean, but, you know, the Giant's Causeway. Go ahead.
So I said quite recently they were just awarded the world's leading visitor attraction as well, this week or the end of last week. So
yeah, that's amazing. Now I've got a question. How many people annually come to play golf in Northern Ireland?
So it'll be quite interesting to see this year's stats, obviously, because we're having a lot of deferred business from the pandemic. So we'll probably have a bumper year this year. So if you look back before the pandemic, 2019, the figures were around 132,000 visitors, 123,000 visitors came to Northern Ireland specifically to play golf. So that'll be from our key market. The US is probably 50% of that, or at least from our revenue perspective. But we get a lot of visitors from GB. Probably the most visitor numbers come from GB, but then the spend will be slightly lower. And then across Europe, Australia, and the Far East as well. But well over 100,000 each year.
What are your goals for 2023?
So 2023 is going to be quite interesting. You know, we're still pretty much in recovery. I think this year will be a very strong year for us, but it's going to be quite interesting to see how that really plateaus, particularly around the situation of cost of living at the moment. You know, is a golf trip going to be deferred by a lot of people? Are people that still want to spend as much when they get here? But you know, the conversation from the operators I deal with is everyone just wants more tee time. So I don't think we're short for any demand. It's really just finding the availability for you guys to come over and play.
Yeah, I started to tell you the group that we had last night, where we did a podcast and we were drinking whiskey while we were talking with them. They were talking about going to Northern Ireland, as a matter of fact, that they'd heard so many great things about it. So fingers crossed we'll be able to get them over for a trip to Northern Ireland sooner rather than later.
Yeah, fantastic.
Now, I know that you're not a native to Ireland. You've told me, but your accent suggests that Irish isn't your native language. But you need to help us North Americans understand, how do you get Beaver Park out of Belvoir Park? I don't get that.
I wish I could answer that question, and I probably couldn't find anyone who could answer for you either. there will be some rationale behind it somewhere. But I suppose that's one of the sort of nuances in Northern Ireland I've come to love so much. Another thing with Belfast as well is the city's divided up into its quarters. So we've got 5 quarters which make up Belfast as sort of its districts. So there's all these quirky little things that people here seem to think is completely normal, but from the outside here, that doesn't quite really make sense. But
yeah, that's fun.
But yeah, when I first got the job, I was struggling to find Beaver on the list of of courses that we had. It took me a while to find it.
Yeah. Well, I picked that up in a video that you all produced with Nick Doherty.
Yes,
the retired golfer and now commentator. But and that was very well done, by the way. But if you would talk about the golf courses in Northern Ireland. I know there are nearly 100 there, or maybe more than 100. But tell us about the golf in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing, on the whole island is that we're spoiled for the number of golf courses for such a small place. Northern Ireland specifically, I mean, from the very bottom right up to the corner, it's a 2.5 hour drive. So we're not a big place. So to have that amount of courses in such a condensed area, and then to have 2 of the top 10 courses in the world located in Northern Ireland as well. So we really do punch above our weight from a capacity side of things for being such a small place. The links product is really what stands out this side of the world. We've got 6 links courses, well, 5 that really stand out and that really appeal to the visitors that play. Royal Portrush and Royal County Down being the 2 big hitters, and then Portstewart right on the heels in terms of the quality of the course. And then the hidden gems, or what we used to call the hidden gems, you probably couldn't call them that anymore. Beanard Glass Golf Club and Castle Rock. The work that's gone into promoting them over the last 5 years has really given them a place, at least in the mindset to the North American visitor. People are familiar with the course now. The word's out there that they're great courses to play. So we're very fortunate in that regard. In terms of the broader parkland offer, we've got courses like Galgorm, which is on the European circuit, or the DP World Tour circuit,
right?
And a great sort of a plethora of hidden ones. But it's what makes each one so special could be the members and the welcome you get at each course, or the viewpoints, or the experiences that are out on its doorstep.
Yeah, I've been amazed at the courses in Northern Ireland. I played 4 of the 5. The one I haven't played of the links courses is Ardglass. That's probably number 1 on my list to get to. I understand it has the oldest clubhouse in golf, and it's a former castle, so that's part of the charm, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah, and it's a great course. The team, they do a brilliant job. We've got Paul Vaughan, who's the pro there. He really understands the market very well, and it's quite interesting when you sit and watch him. We had a fam trip in last week, and when you got a fam trip in and you're on your best behavior, but I watched him with all the other groups, and he's there greeting on the tee box, and everyone tees off, and then he's following up with each group after in the clubhouse and really extending that welcome. So everyone turns away from or leaves Ardglass having a very, very good experience, and the golf course is something else as well.
Yeah, I'm very eager to play that. I was there most recently. I was there pre-pandemic 2019, and we didn't play golf while we were there, but we were there for the Open Championship at Portrush, which was spectacular. I played it twice before, and I know that they've made some changes. I haven't played since they made the changes, but that was a huge success. So much so, I understand that at the time, and maybe still, is regarded as the most successful of all the Opens that have ever been held. I don't know what measure that's by, but it's a great compliment to Northern Ireland. Yeah,
well, it's still, obviously the 150th has come in since, but I think prior to the 150th, we're still the biggest number of ticket sales outside of any Open that's outside of St Andrews, which is quite a big accolade, considering that we'd hosted was the second time in history, the first time in quite a few years back. But I think a lot of people just didn't know what to expect, and that's a lot of the charm with Northern Ireland. I think Portrush is a course people are familiar with, but it was the volunteers. They were phenomenal around the course. It was the feedback from all the players and their experiences, both on and off the course.
Right.
The corporates involved in it couldn't speak highly enough about all aspects of the trip. So hugely successful for us, and I think it's sort of reflected in that with it coming back again so soon.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's what's amazing. I don't think people realize that it'll be back soon. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But so what has the impact been of the Open Championship being held at Portrush on golf tourism there?
From a direct impact in 2019 is probably our biggest year from a golf tourism revenue from a visitor spend. I think we'd over 50, first time we broke over 50 million pounds. 52 million was the final count from the impact from golf. I think from the tournament itself, it generated over 100 million pounds in terms of the combined economic impact. So if you're looking at the opportunity we had to promote ourselves globally, we had 500 million eyes on Northern Ireland, which a lot of people hadn't probably considered, not only to visit as a golfer, but to visit as a destination. It really helped us in terms of promoting ourselves as a world-class golf destination. A lot of work had gone into the preceding years before that to try just get the awareness around Northern Ireland. The Open sort of cemented that for us. So looking at it now, building up to the next one, it's just trying to leverage that and try to tell those success stories about what made it so successful. And a lot of that was really the people and the welcome and the broader Northern Ireland also.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting too, George. I'd been to 3 Opens before that, and then I went to Portrush, but I also went to the Open this past year at St. Andrews. But I remember telling someone, this was probably, let's say it was this time in 2018, and I'm having a conversation like you and I are having, and I was telling them that I was going to go to the Open at Portrush, and they said, "Are tickets hard to get?" And I said, "No, right? They're easy to get." So I hang up the phone. Literally 15 minutes later, and this is not an exaggeration, I get an email from the R&A, and it says, Open Championship sold out. And I'm like, I literally just told someone how easy the tickets were to get. So I go online and I find that the only tickets they have left are for Thursday, which is the first day, or the practice round. So I snapped up the 5 tickets I needed for that Thursday. And since then, we've had to get into a lottery. So I had to get into a lottery for the Open at St. Andrews. I had to get into one for next year at Royal Liverpool. So it's crazy. You're the first, Royal Portrush was the first Open where you had to enter a lottery to get tickets.
Yeah, and I think it was the fastest selling Open as well in terms of ticket sales. So you imagine from our perspective, all the work that got into the campaign activity, to try to promote ticket sales and push the sales of tickets, and then a week later we're like, okay, shucks, they're all gone. We've got to pull back on all this activity that we had planned.
Yeah. Well, I think you got some additional push or additional bump, if you will, because not only did you host the Open Championship at Portrush, but a local one in Shane Lowry, and he's probably, if not the most likable, one of the most likable people on tour. And then on top of that, the way that the other Irish pros, Seamus Power, Rory, Darren Clark, Padraig, the way that they embraced him and supported him, it almost felt like it was an Irish team supporting him, right? It was wonderful.
It was phenomenal. And I watched it back quite recently, and you just couldn't help but get emotional when they walk up to the 18th green. And it did help that we had a local winner, because the crowd were, that really contributed to the atmosphere on the day. Yeah. But it was magic. And it's great. I mean, we're so fortunate to have such great golf ambassadors, and they're all so proud of home. And whenever they got the opportunity to talk about home and promote home, they do so well. So we had a meeting with the R&A back in April, and they said literally they could not have scripted that any better. They said, no, if Rory could have qualified for the cut, if he had made the cut on that, right at the end, it would have just been the dream sort of storyboard of an event. But it was brilliant. So let's hope we can replicate that in 2025. There'll be big expectations from that perspective.
Well, Rory missed the cut by one stroke after a horrendous start on the first hole. Yeah, that would have been phenomenal to have him. But, I think Darren Clark missed by a stroke. It would have been wonderful to have him in, particularly since he's a member at Royal Portrush. I forgot to mention Graham McDowell. He's a great Irish pro. It was wonderful. But now, in just 3 short years, the Open returns in 2025 to Royal Portrush. Can you talk about the plans that you have to promote the Open, and perhaps more importantly, how do you leverage the fact that, again, you're going to have more than 500 million, 500 million, I should say, 500 million eyes on Northern Ireland?
Yeah, so I suppose we're fortunate in the second time round is that we've got a lot of learnings. Back in 2019, it was new territory for the RNA. It was new territory for us. I don't think it was probably the biggest event we'd ever hosted in Northern Ireland. So we've got the learnings under our belt, and we can sort of look forward to building on that. But for us, our priority is really to try to use it to leverage the Northern Ireland sell. What makes us what made 2019 so special? A lot of it was to do with the people. It was a lot to do with how proud people are here about the country, what there is to see and do for you to come and experience here. So we'll try and incorporate a lot more of that into the messaging around what makes the destination so special, as opposed to just the golf course or the tournament itself. I think with the RNA as well, they really felt there was this Ryder Cup type atmosphere at the event. So we really try to push as much of that as possible. And looking at the ballot system going forward, this probably mean that if you are successful in getting a ticket, you might get a ticket for just the one day. So we really want to build up the festival atmosphere around the tournament across Northern Ireland. So if we can come right to the licensing laws around the TV coverage, we can maybe have a fan zone in the city and really try to spread that out. And then for us, the other side of it is using it to really build some civic pride. The Northern Ireland's on a fantastic journey from, especially the last 11 years that I've been living here. The country and the ethos and the belief in itself has transformed. So these type of events are so important for us to really galvanize people across Northern Ireland, make them believe in what we are as a destination, what our capabilities are. So there's a lot of different threads going into our thinking towards it. But yeah, it's the planning has already begun in terms of what we're trying to achieve, albeit 2 and a bit years out.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic event. And you mentioned that it may be the largest, or it was the largest event ever in Northern Ireland. It's got to be the largest event on the entire island. When you think about, how many people were there? 300,000 visitors?
Yeah, 237,000 we had attending, of which nearly 60% of those were out-of-state visitors as well. So a big number of visitors, and you could have seen that. Even now, I suppose if you're trying to book accommodation in 2025, you'll find a lot of rooms already booked out for it. So the anticipation, the expectations are already building.
Yeah, I think we stayed we stayed more than 100 miles away. I know that. We couldn't find anything close by, which was fine because we'd had a late round of golf. So we stayed at a property near where we were playing in the Republic, and then drove up the next morning. And I was actually surprised that even though it's one road going in there, albeit from 2 different directions, east and west, the entrance and egress was relatively easy. It wasn't too problematic.
Yeah, I attended it. I was up on the Saturday, and from a logistical point of view, I was blown away at how well everything worked. To have such a small town with that many people in it, from the council perspective to the traffic control to the volunteers, it was a really slick operation. It really was.
Yeah. Well, let's
so
see.
Go ahead. Coming up for 2025?
Well, I'll definitely be there for that. But I don't know when I'm going to get back. I'm trying to put together an escorted trip for next year to the Republic. But we would definitely, I would want to come by and meet you, and then you and I could play golf, and I could take some money off of you, and that way I can, defray the cost of my trip.
Brilliant.
We'll
see how we go.
But I wanted to switch gears and talk about the guests that we have. And yesterday I put together a list of all the trips we have booked next year. and where they're going. And what I can tell you is that 10% of our groups are going to England. 20% are going to, no, I take that back. 30% are going to Ireland, and 60% are going to Scotland. And what can visitors expect from golf in Northern Ireland and the experience that you as a people would provide?
So from the golfing perspective, I mean, 2 of the top 10 courses in the world. So, you're going to experience, it is that bucket list golf courses that you can be playing on. It's, it's the dream come true type of golf courses that you'll be on. From my perspective, and having lived here and seen so much of the country and got to know it so well, it is really that hospitality aspect. What makes Northern Ireland so different is that we're a new destination. From a tourism perspective, we didn't have a lot of footfall here a decade ago. So there really is that genuine appetite to welcome visitors in. It's really authentic. It's the hospitality is just built into the DNA of the people here. But likewise, now that we've been on this journey, we've had a lot of time, particularly over COVID, to look back at the product development side of what we do here and get sort of businesses, working together, clustering, understanding how to work with operators, getting them to see what parts of their experiences they can sort of tease out and amplify to the guests. So we've got a whole wealth of great new experiences. You speak to anyone that knows Northern Ireland quite well, Bushmills, for example, on the whiskey side of things, they'll want to go out and visit Bushmills. But we've got so many other new distilleries that have popped up where it's small distilleries, owner operated, that you'll get a real personal experience there. And it's those emotional connections. I mean, I don't know if probably the same for a lot of people, but for myself, when I travel, I'll have my itinerary and I'll have the things that I want to pick out. So say, for example, my trip to Northern Ireland, I'll know I'm playing Royal County Down, I'll know I'm playing Portrush, and it's what I'm here to do. And I'll have a really good sense of what to expect. But it's when you look back, say 12 months past your trip, it's those emotional experiences or those surprises that you'll really look back on and remember so fondly. And a lot of that will have to do with people and
right.
The experiences with the local people, and then the things that you didn't expect. So it'll be that little distillery that you weren't too familiar with, or particularly the food and drink offering.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with what you're saying. It's interesting. I think when you try to explain to people what they'll encounter in Northern Ireland, it's hard to describe. It's like, just wait, you have to experience it. But once you do, it's literally unforgettable. And, behind me, my backdrop is Royal Portrush, and over my left shoulder, what you're seeing, or my right shoulder, I guess, is Dunluce Castle, which is an amazing place to visit. It's right on the Giant's Causeway. There's the Carrick Reader Rope Bridge right there. There's the Giant's Causeway itself. It's just an amazing. I think it's one of the most beautiful drives in the world. Certainly one of the most underrated drives in the world. And Game of Thrones was filmed not too far from there too, correct?
Yeah, so there's filming locations across most of Northern Ireland. So the main studios, and there's actually been a big attraction that opened up in the spring of this year. So it's called the Linen Mill Studios. So it's about an hour from Belfast on the way down to Dublin, so midway between the two cities. And that is a phenomenal, if you're a big fan, it is a phenomenal experience to go through. It's all the original costumes, the sets, the scene of the Red Wedding. You can actually walk into the actual set where that was filmed. Wow. So again, you're talking about the spotlight that the Open gave us. Game of Thrones, again, was the same thing to a different type of audience as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that you talked about was the experience of meeting people there, right? And when you go to Royal Portrush and to Royal County Down, with all due respect, what you're going to find are a lot of Americans playing there, right? Which is fine. I've played them. I'm guilty. But when you go to Port Stewart, Ardglass, Castle Rock, what you get are real locals. There aren't busloads of Americans. And everyone wants to play the big courses, right? And I get it. You want to play championship courses, and they are phenomenal. Like you said, George, they're two of the top 10 courses literally in the world. You can't beat them, right? But what we hear time and time again is our guests love these local courses, what we call members courses. They're just fantastic. And whether it's the starter, the people in the bar, the restaurant, the caddies, it's just phenomenal. And we can't recommend strongly enough that people need to visit and experience not just Royal Portrush and not just Royal County Down, but the other courses in the area as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more in that regard. And that's again to the people, that hospitality, particularly the smaller courses that you might not have heard of. If you come in with a foreign accent, the red carpet will be rolled out for you, and if you got to get back to the hotel for dinner at 7, good luck, because the members are not going to let you leave. And I wish I could find some way to package that up into some sort of video that you can understand what that's like, but you cannot really understand that until you get to the course itself and experience it. We hosted a fam trip at the end of September. A couple of North American operators were with us, and on the way back down the coast, we stopped and played at a club called Can Do. So the beautiful headland course, not too far from Lawn. And I think a lot of the operators thought, look, it's on the way back to Belfast. We just, I've got an obligation to sort of push us off the beaten track. We arrived, the president or the captain came around and gave us a sort of introduction to the club, what they're trying to achieve, and the sort of the role they played in the NI Open. They featured in the NI Open this year. And a member joined each of the 4 balls. So it was great to have some local knowledge on the course. I think they all saved a couple of shots as they went around. By the end of the afternoon, I literally had to drag the guys out of the club. One particular American guy just kept disappearing. We look at the bus. Where's John? Can't find John. There he is at the bar with another member, 2 pints in his hand. Yeah. So I think he went back on the bus, double parked with his 2 pints. But it really was. And from that fam trip, we had an amazing experience. But the one thing that everybody spoke about so often, the thank you emails I got afterwards is all Can Do really blew them away. And we have those courses dotted around all over the place. So I'd always say to somebody, you really want to have that experience. Golf, it's a great medium where you can connect to someone from a totally different culture, different country, because you're playing the same game with the same rules, but you get to experience it in a totally different way than you do at home. And I can't encourage you enough, if you want to get out and really get under the skin of the thing, out of the country, is pick a course that will have a real local membership. Let them know that you're coming in and have that red carpet experience. It's always
that's wonderful advice, truly. So what can visitors expect off the course? And what I mean by that is there's a lot to see and do there, but what do you recommend that people see and do there, other than the Titanic Museum?
Yeah, I mean, for this part of the world, history we're obviously very fortunate from the history. So, I mean, your castles, or there's bits of castles left that were built in the 1300s. So I'm sure for the Americans, your mindset's the same as mine growing up in Africa, where nothing's too much older than 100 years.
Right.
So to see castles that are close to 1,000 years old is quite something. Then for us specifically, when I say we're a new destination, we haven't really had that. We're not well trodden, and we haven't had tourism experiences or tourism product that's been around for many years. So you're going to be surprised with a lot of you see. We have a very strong food and drink offering, and a lot of people aren't too aware of how self-sustainable or how self-sufficient the island is in terms of our product or our produce. There is a big emphasis on sustainability. So it's sourcing local,
right.
Local providence, promoting local providence, supporting local businesses. So not just environmental sustainability, but economic sustainability as well. And to really make ourselves stand out as unique destination, we promote what we have on our shores, and you'll see that the best through our food and drink offering. And then my absolute favorite is the pub scene, and then the nighttime economy and the music that you'll get here. For a city with such a big drinking culture, I've not even seen an argument out in Belfast. In South Africa, often you'll have someone who's had too many brandies, and there's always a scuffle going on in the corner of some bar. That we just don't get here. You can sit at a pub with other people. Everyone's out to have a good time. The music is unbelievable. The talent of people here, from a musical perspective, is phenomenal. So, you've got what you'd expect. And then looking at COVID, from a product development side, we launched our destination brand right before the pandemic started. We're think this is the worst possible thing that could happen in terms of the investment and the rollout of this brand. But actually, in looking back in retrospect, it was a real good thing to happen to us, because it gave us an opportunity to go back and look at all the product we have. How are we going to help these businesses identify the market that they're going to align best to, help to get them working in the clusters, help to get them promote themselves and enhance whatever their experience might be. And you know, I've been in the golf for all a year. When I catch up with my previous colleagues in the experience development team, I cannot even believe how much has changed in 1 year, me out of that role.
Right.
The stuff that's coming through. So
Right.
we've been able to sort of package it up. So from our perspective on the golf side, is really to just give it to you in a menu and say, look, what do you want to do? We can cover from history to the social side to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's literally too much to see and do in a single trip. Yeah, and I mean that in all sincerity. We've got the visitors that we have going to Northern Ireland next year. Just in Belfast alone, there's more to see and do than they'll have time for, which is a wonderful problem for you to have, that there's that much to offer, that much to choose from. So I know I'll be talking to you before our guests come over, because I'm going to want to get some additional tips on the hot places to eat. You mentioned an area of town that you particularly like for the food, drink, and music scene. What's the name of that again?
The Cathedral Quarter.
Yeah, there you go.
That's our pub district, where it's, you know, similar to the Temple Bar in Dublin. There's you know, a dozen pubs all next door to each other and on top of each other. And that's where all the locals will be, you know, Friday, Saturday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night. It's a really great atmosphere. And there's a great range of pubs, you know, if you want something where you can sit down and have a drink a bit more quieter, to right next door, the rowdier pubs where the sort of younger lads and lasses will be at. So we've got all of that in the Cathedral Quarter.
Well, you know, one of the things that we talk to our clients about is that we can literally plan every minute of their day. And we prefer not because we don't want to go to that trouble, but more so because we want them to experience serendipity, where they find their own pub, their own restaurant, right? Their own activity or experience, right? I think that's what can make a trip most memorable.
Yeah,
and we have a firm belief that most of the great memories people have on these golf trips, those great memories are created off the course, in a pub, in a museum, on the Giant's Causeway, at Bushmills, at, you know, wherever they are in Northern Ireland. There's so much to see and do.
Yeah.
So,
and Belfast for a city as well, you know, it's what a lot of people don't expect is it is such a compact city. So if you're in the city, you know, it's a 15-minute walk from one end to the other of everything you need, be it the attractions, the pubs, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the shopping malls, the hotel that you'll be staying at. You're all so close, and it's a perfectly safe city and a really friendly city as well. So you can easily get lost up or caught up in some friendly local who sees you with your map trying to work out where to go, and next minute you've been invited back to their local for a drink, or dinner, or to go visit the family the next day.
Well, I've got one more question for you, George, and that is, you know, for a typical golfer that comes over with us, they're going to play 5 or 6 rounds of golf. They're going to have a day or two off to explore. What do you think they're going to be most surprised about in their visit to Northern Ireland?
I think, and for me, look, I've been very fortunate in the line of work I do, that I've got to bring so many people in to show off Northern Ireland. You know, if it's tour operators, or when I was working at Visit Belfast, you know, to encourage conference business into the city. So I've got to see a lot of people's experiences or the perceptions of the city, and everyone is very surprised on what Belfast is. And I think there is this mindset still, or this understanding of what Belfast was through the legacy of the Troubles, you know, the 70s and 80s, this grim industrial type grey city. Whereas when you get here, it's almost anything but. It's a very young city, incredibly creative city, vibrant, fantastic food and drink scene. So everyone is really surprised about what Belfast is, and the caliber of the people, the friendliness of the people. You know, you're expecting there to be divisions in the city. You know, if you do the political taxi tour, which is something I really recommend when you're here to sort of get to understand that history. But we still have the peace walls that segregate two sections of the community. It's probably not necessity. It's probably not stopping an awful lot of trouble from happening, but it's still there. And you can go see it and experience it and see and learn about what it was like from those times. But for a city that still has this dividing wall and parts of it, to go into the city center and everyone sits together, everyone drinks together, there's no worry about what race you are, what your sexuality, your religion. It's a very, very welcoming and modern friendly city.
Yeah, I think I told you, and this is probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I was in Belfast and we went to, actually, what was something else just occurred to me. Well, at any rate, I was with my father. I took him for his 70th birthday, so it was 15 years ago. And we went to a pub, and it was the football match, or as we could say, soccer match that was on was Rangers and Celtic, and the bar was equally divided of supporters. But to your point, there weren't any fights or very well behaved crowd, each exuberant with their team, but nothing happened between them, which was interesting. The other thing, now that I think about it, we stayed in a B&B that was the former or the home of the man that designed Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And 15 years ago, that movie was probably, it was still a popular movie then, right? Because the movie's probably been out nearly 20 years now. So
yeah, over. I remember when I was still in high school, so 22 years.
Yeah. Thanks for that. 22 years ago, you're in high school.
Time flies when you're having fun. Did you get a chance to go into the Titanic Hotel when you're here?
No, I didn't. We went to the Titanic Museum.
Yeah. So right across the road from the museum is the hotel. That was the original Harland and Wolff drawing offices. So where all where all the clerks were drawing all the plans for the ships and where everything happened. So they've restored that into a hotel. And to go into the history is phenomenal. So you can go into Thomas Andrews' office. He's the man who designed the Titanic, and you can go. It is restored to, it really was like when he was there. My favorite part is when you go up. So now what were the drawing room is where everyone sat, obviously, with their plans back in the day before we had the luxury of computers and CAD and all the rest of it. They'd have a presentation room. So they'd bring up the buyers and you'd sit in this huge, big, it was quite lavish in those days, presentation room where they'd be talking about the plans of the ship, and you're overlooking down onto the drawing room where everyone would sit with the plans laid out. So, to have that, and it's free to get in, you can go, it's a hotel, there's a bar and a restaurant, you can go sit and eat at, but you can go and walk around and explore. And if the rooms don't have any meetings, aren't being used, you can go pop your head and look around. So it's almost like a museum as well. But to see that experience and feel it and be a part of, obviously, what was that history of those days, they've done a phenomenal job there.
That's fantastic. Well, George, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. And I can't say, again, strongly enough how much we enjoy the Irish hospitality, and the golf courses are wonderful. The people are amazingly friendly. And I can personally guarantee that anyone that goes to Northern Ireland is going to have an amazing time, both on and off the course. George, I'll look forward to meeting you face to face soon, I hope. And thanks again for being on the podcast with us.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much. And definitely when you're over, let's get that bet on the golf course. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to taking your money.
I pay in Zimbabwe dollars and then we're okay.
There you go. There you go.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Travel Royally podcast. Thanks again to George for coming on. We love the work that you're doing. We really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with Jeff. Well, we are looking forward to the next guest. Hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.